I know. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wine, Women, and Words. I am Michelle, and with me, of course, is Diana.
Hello.
And we have a crasher here. I knew that was going to happen. And we have a special guest this evening. We have an award-winning journalist, and I'm a freelance journalist myself, so I'm totally nerding out on that one right now.
Okay.
And author Stephen Kiernan. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Delighted to join you and your assistant.
So we have a second assistant standing in the doorway, so could get crazy here. So we have we're later no, it's not even later. It's the same time, just a different time zone right now. So I'm in North Carolina, this lovely craft room at my mom's house, and I'm enjoying my mom's wines. I don't have my Wink wine with me right now. I couldn't fit it in the suitcase.
You gotta get mom to sign up for Wink so that you
I know. I had this whole conversation with her. So
which have all kinds of jumping in. I see your cat there, Stephen.
This is my muse.
So what is everyone enjoying this evening for beverages?
Well, Diana, why don't you go before me?
Okay. Well, usually it's guests first, but I'm enjoying a white blend. I was drinking it last week, and I have to finish off the bottle. And it's a Koya from the central coast of California here. So it's this nice white wine because it's summertime, and I want something light. And how about you, Stephen? What are you drinking?
Well, the same thing. I did this time of year. I really like a light wine. I like a slightly chilled Beaujolais is what I would normally have. But there's been this whole trendy thing that's been going on with rosés, and I've resisted and resisted, and I've given up the fight. I'm drinking a really nice French rosé, and it's not too sweet. And I had a lot of onions with my dinner, and this is just like the perfect thing to have with that. And it's very light, so I feel like I'll be totally fresh in the morning. And it's nice and cold, and I have a bottle in a very cold marble vessel behind me, so I may refresh it in the course of our conversation.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, it's nice to see that rosés are the trend across the country, because I know they're huge here in LA. Every outdoor festival and concert I go to, everybody, and I'm not exaggerating, everybody has a bottle of rosé.
Well, you remember about 10 years ago when everyone was drinking, the only white wine anyone drank was Chardonnay, right?
Mm-hmm.
I like a lot of variety personally, but I don't know. We've had a record heat this summer, and I've just wanted really light wines, just something really to refresh. You know, it's I'm not cooking steaks, I'm cooking fish.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah, I totally understand. Right now in LA, I feel like I'm living in the Mojave Desert. Today was a whopping 104 degrees, and yeah, tomorrow's gonna be cooler. We're gonna start cooling down. It's gonna be in the 90s.
Wow.
So I could put those sweaters on finally.
Well, you're not anyway. I know I've seen all the fires and everything, but it didn't dawn on me you're not anywhere near the fires, right?
No, thank goodness, knock on wood, because I do have this lovely hill behind me that you guys can't see right now. But no fires near me. Right now they're out in the eastern portion of Orange County, and going out more towards the desert.
Well, I swear I'm a good friend, and I knew that you live in California, but for some reason it just didn't click with me.
But actually, you know, her garage is on fire, but she's really, really dedicated to getting this done on time.
I am.
Ryan is out there handling it right now.
Exactly.
Yes. I mean, nothing keeps me from books and wine, so.
The wine is packed, so we're safe.
Yeah, the wine and the books are packed. They're in the car, ready to go. I swear, you know, it's one of those tests of things, you know, the fire, what would be your top 5 things to save? It would be the dogs. You know, assuming, you know, my husband could handle himself, I wouldn't have to worry about saving him, but it would be my dogs and my books. I would just grab as many as possible.
You know, I've been thinking about. My sons are a little older, and so I'm an empty nester now, and I'm thinking about getting a different home. And I love this place, so it probably won't happen fast. But I know that you need to prepare for that. It's a long job, and so I've been one of the things I've been dealing with is surplus books,
Mm.
and I read about 100 or 150 a year, and so there's a lot of years of them piled up there. But what I've been going through first is the shelves of books that people have given me, and I think there's actually an essay in there because I'm finding, like for example, I found 3 copies of The Giving Tree. I have 3 copies, and I've never bought that book, and I wonder what are people trying to tell me? They keep giving me The Giving Tree, you know. I have to sort this out. What
There,
message is in people's gifts?
there are subliminal messages that they're trying to pass along. You should
Am I the
read
kid
this
or the
book.
tree? You know? Yeah.
Well, I know that this is a Chilean wine, and I know that this is good, and that is all that I know about this wine.
Yes, we got to get your mom on the Wink sponsorship plan. And for those of you who are listening and watching, get on Wink as well. This way you don't have to worry about running out of wine. In case there is a fire and your wine is destroyed, they'll just deliver the next one to wherever you're staying the next month. So go to that. Help us keep our doors open one more month. And then you get $22 off your first order by wink.com/www podcast. I said 3 W's, right?
3 podcasts,
So
3 W's.
Is Wink a wine club? Is that sort of how it works?
It is. Oops. Yeah, it's kind of like a wine club where you don't have to pay a membership, and every month they send you, wines based on a quiz that you take. So they'll ask questions about your palate and how do you like your coffee? Do you like really earthy foods? And they give you recommendations, and then they send you get to pick out wines based on those recommendations. And the more wines that you rate, the better your recommendations get.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and they really tailor it to you. And I truly have not found a wine that I don't like.
And they have some really good rosés.
There you go. Well, I think the hardest thing about wine is learning what you like.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's so many wines. But then, like, as you find, for me at least, as I found what I liked, that's made it easier. I'm not as intimidated by a wine list and things like that. And something like this sounds like it might be helpful.
It is. Yeah, it really is. Because, especially for those who aren't as familiar, we get stuck in that rut of, okay, I like Chardonnays, I like Pinot Grigios, I like Cabernets. And this is like, well, here, why don't you try this? If you like these flavors, try this one. Yeah, it's just a really great company. And, if you guys go to our special link, which will be in all of our show notes, you get $22 off your first order. So you can see why Michelle and I keep praising it.
So I don't know if you can tell, but I have this app on my phone because of what I was talking about, where anytime I drink a wine that I like, I take a picture of the label so that I'll be able to find it again. Because you know what I mean? It's like, how do you build a vocabulary of wines? You just, so it's really geeky, I know. But right now there's 17 wines in there that I liked that I haven't bought, and so I've got like a case and a half that's, whenever I got some extra cash.
Yeah, it's really fun because it also, they send you wines that, that I don't really see on the shelves very often. So they'll send, French wines, Spanish wines, Portuguese wines, all, wines from everywhere. So you're not really limited to a particular region either.
Mm-hmm.
It's fun. And, who doesn't like getting bottles of wine in the mail?
It's true. As you might imagine, for the book that I recently published, it was imperative for me to drink French wines for a while. It's just part of the research. You have to sacrifice for your art.
Yes.
And drink French wines so you think like a Frenchman.
Yes, exactly. There's no other way to do it.
So now, speaking of books, because we could talk about wine all night. But before we totally dive into your fictional books, now I'm really interested in, your career as a journalist. And since I'm balancing freelance journalism and trying slowly to write my own book. But how did you balance the two, or did the one lead into the other, or how did that come about?
You know, I wish I could say that I was smart enough to have had a grand plan, but it was more, but it didn't really happen that way. So I had a variety of jobs and was always writing fiction on the side, usually in the morning, but not always, but usually in the morning. And eventually I realized if I was going to be a writer, I needed to get more educated in it. And so I got into the Iowa Writers Workshop. And while I was there, pretty much everyone, I mean, there were a lot of really talented people. I was definitely on the lower end of the spectrum there. And there were a lot of people that were thinking they were going to have an academic life. They were going to go become writing professors someplace. And that's fine for a lot of people, but it really didn't appeal to me that much. And there weren't very many options. So you would have to be in not great places and not great jobs. And while I was in Iowa City, I started writing for the Daily Iowan, the daily newspaper of the university town. And I found that I was a little bit addicted to being in print. And also that there were lots of jobs in newspapers. This is 1989, different world for newspapers. And so when I finished up in Iowa, I continued working in newspapers and did for, almost 20 years, all told, 18 years, something like that. And I think I worked for every department of a newspaper except sports. I never worked in the sports department. But most of the years, I worked as an editorial writer and columnist, and I loved that work. Everyone was entitled to my opinion. But I loved being an editorial writer, and I had a publisher who was tough, but gave me a lot of rope. He really let me run after things, and so I learned a lot, and really felt that job was a great privilege. And then there was a time when you were beginning to feel the newspaper constrict, and somebody would leave for another job and their job would go unfilled, or your budget would get cut even when you had a good year. And I began to feel like a polar bear on an ice floe that was just shrinking, Mm-hmm. And so I had at that point spent, 15 years writing about healthcare and one particular element of it. And so a friend connected me with an agent who helped me to develop a proposal for a book about that slice, because healthcare is vast, but that slice is a small enough area you can have an expertise. So that's what led to my first book. And at that point, I took the big risk and lived on the advance while I wrote that book. And then I published another journalistic book after that about kind of national renewal through volunteerism and civic engagement. And then I took the real leap to what I'd wanted to do all that time and had been doing on the side all that time, and went back and wrote some novels. And at that point, I had 4 novels I'd written that had not been published. And so, but now I've had 3 that have come out, and I'm very far along in writing the next one, which is going to have the same editor and publisher as the last 3, and they're lovely folks and take great care of me. So I feel very fortunate in that. So I would say in the end, I ended up probably having about 25 years as a journalist. I tried freelancing, and I did not have the disposition for it. I was always worried about having the next article in the pipeline. And that's part of what newspapers is great about, because you start over every morning. You got to build a whole newspaper that day, every day. So there was more security for that for me.
Well, I think I'm always really interested in editorials. I do the newspaper I write for right now is weekly, and I do 1 article a week. So I have every week you have to come up with a new idea, and my editor, she lets me do really whatever I want. So Great. It's awesome, to cover a wide variety of topics. But editorials is like you have to come up with. I can, if I'm running on low, if I don't really have an idea, I can look at a community calendar and go, oh, there's a festival this weekend that I can go cover. And that's kind of, like an easy event for me that requires very little creativity to think of. But columnists, you have to come up with like something of matter, of substance to write about every week.
So, you know, I had a column for not quite 9 years, and that's very hard because, you know, there's your face next to it. I hope I'm interesting this week, right? And also they call it a column because traditionally it was one column down the side of a broadsheet, which meant that after the headline in your photo, you had 102 lines. And some weeks your idea was a 90-line idea. And so you just put a lot of paragraphs in and add a few words. And sometimes your idea was a 125-line idea, and you had to cut and cut and cut to make it fit that 102. They weren't going to make the paper any bigger for you. And that was hard. Writing the regular editorials was not. It was really feeling like don't worry about being right all the time. You won't be right all the time. But be informed enough that you can cause constructive conversation and maybe be a thumb on the scale if some social issue or political issue is being debated. I think that it's, you know, a lot of newspapers don't do the same kind of editorial job now, especially smaller size papers. And the larger papers, I think they're really unsubtle. They're really looking for great declarations of position instead of, you know, here's a nuance or a place people could work together, or an idea that's not liberal or conservative, but new. And I think there's less of that now. And I think that's probably because the financial pressures are so acute. I think if you have a regular weekly newspaper gig, that's great. That's 52 pieces a year. You can build a legacy with years like that, you know?
It's a lot of fun. And I could totally sit here and pick your brain about newspapers for the whole interview. But I know we have books to talk about, which is just as fun.
Okay.
Well, looking at your books, there's an extensive amount of research that goes into each one of them. How do you feel your career as a journalist helped you prepare for those books?
You know, it's one of the things that surprised me about the fiction that I've been writing. I don't think of myself as a historian or even as a researcher. A reporter's not really a researcher, but I'm writing these books where I have to learn a ton about subjects. And what I find is, just like a reporter has to have kind of a nose for what the story is. In some, you know, you can go to a city council meeting for 3 hours and you're listening for what is the real story here. And the same thing is true when you're researching for a novel. You know, you're looking for the thing that shows the kind of the humanity. I'll give you an example. So, you know, The Baker's Secret is about Normandy during the Nazi occupation, right? It's mainly about D-Day from the French perspective. So when I was doing the research on that, I did not have a full outline for the book or anything like that. I wasn't even sure that there was a novel about this. There'd been a lot of D-Day books, just none from the French perspective. So I was interested in that idea. And I was doing research, and I ran across a story when one of the Germans knew that there was going to be an attack on the coast of France. And so they built what was called the Atlantic Wall. And it was hundreds and hundreds of miles long, concrete, steel reinforced concrete wall to repel invaders. And it even had a certain kind of lip on it so that tanks would get tipped over if they tried to come over it for years. And most of that was done with forced labor. French men would be made to go down and do this work at gunpoint day after day after day. So there was this one area in Normandy where one day the commandant of that area called the men together and said, tomorrow morning we will be visited, or tomorrow afternoon we'll be visited by the field marshal of the Third Reich. And he is one of the most powerful people on earth. And he's coming to inspect the work here. And when he comes, as a sign of respect, you men will remove your caps. And those of you who do not remove your caps will not be eating dinner that night. And this is in a time when for a Frenchman to wear a hat was as common as him wearing pants. So the next day, all the men showed up for work. Obviously, they didn't want to tip their hat. Well, when Rommel showed up the next day, there are all the men, and they'd shown up for work with no hats on. And right, and I heard that, and then I found out that apparently in that region, having a sunburn was a sign of defiance. And so everyone would go outside and try and get a little sunburn because it meant, you know, you may have all the guns and all the power, but you do not own my will. I still have my dignity. And literally, I read that story about the hats, and I said, I have a novel here.
Nice.
And the story about the hats does not appear in the novel, but it just told me that human dignity was still there, that there was a defiance. And so the research is different. It isn't, you know, you will not see in that book anything about the difference between the 82nd Airborne and the 101st Airborne, because a French person wouldn't know. All they know is it's somebody who parachuted in with a gun and he's on our side, right? So I did all that research, but it was just out of sense. Then I kind of put it aside and just told the human story. And that is a really fun kind of research to do.
I love that. And one of the things I love about historical fiction, in a lot of ways, it feels like you're doing an anthropological dig through documents, find and piece together these people within history. Because I'm a history nerd myself. I almost got a degree in history, but I went with sociology instead. And for me, I feel like just that's the real gem of historical fiction, is finding these themes in history and relating it to the present. And I think that's, you know, one of the gems within The Baker's Secret is that resistance book itself, that, you know, it's something that can be carried through, and it's a lesson that you can find in present day.
Yes. In fact, the whole idea for me is to find the story from the past that reflects on the present. You know, The Hummingbird is about a guy coming back from his third deployment in Iraq, and he's a mess. But half of the book is also about a Japanese pilot after World War II and how he tried to make amends for bombs he had dropped. And the question I had, it's still taped right here next to my desk, is it possible for a warrior to become a man of peace? And that's a question that exists in the novel, but it's also a question that exists in our society. We're 17 years in Afghanistan now. Can we become a nation of peace again? You know, it was 50 years ago was a summer of love. Doesn't that feel like pretty far away from whatever summer we're having right now? It's not a summer of love.
Yeah.
You know, so to what extent can the past kind of inform the present?
Yeah, it's like those two sayings. So, you know, I know that brings up the saying with the military: every soldier prays for peace but prepares for war. Being an Army wife, I heard that all the time. And then there's also my favorite Mark Twain quote. See, I'm already slurring my words with my line. It didn't even take me the full hour tonight. But Mark Twain had said, history does not repeat itself, but sure as hell does rhyme. And that's one of the things that I find so true with historical fiction and history in general. Is, you know, we're not going to repeat history, but it's going to rhyme. We're going to see those comparisons.
You know, I'm writing a book right now. The main character is a bright young mathematician. It's 1944. He's 21 years old, and he's a whiz at math. And he has been brought to Los Alamos, where he ultimately ends up designing the detonator for the atomic bomb. And he knows exactly what he's doing and what the consequences will be. And it's a weight on his conscience. And then he sees the bombs used, and it's a weight on his conscience. And that's kind of part of the novel, and the rest of the novel is about his redemption. And actually, it's a love story about how his wife helps him with the redemption. And the whole time I was researching this, I was thinking, this is a very unique set of circumstances. This is the guy building the detonator for a weapon we use twice in all of human history. But then I thought, actually, it's universal, because every soldier has a weapon of some kind for which he or she is responsible. Every sailor, every airman, they participate in some kind of weaponry, and they have to come to terms with their conscience and with the morality of that device, and when it's appropriate to use it and when it's not, and what's a noble exercise of that power and what's an ignoble exercise of that power, and that each person has to come to that determination themselves. So you read the things they carried, and those guys are struggling with that. You read All Quiet on the Western Front, those guys are struggling with that. And you read The Baker's Secret, those people are struggling. And this book I'm writing now about this guy working on the atomic bomb, it's no different from an infantryman with a rifle who's maybe going to have to shoot or not shoot. It just happens to be a more powerful rifle. And
Right.
so I'm finding, and I didn't know when I started, that's the story, but it's to find that universal thing that existed in the past and can teach us, perhaps.
It must be such a good feeling to figure out what it is you're writing about. You start a story and you don't really know what it is you're doing, and then all of a sudden it clicks, and it must be awesome to figure that out.
This sort of goes, Michelle, this sort of goes back to what we were talking about with journalism, because, so many years in daily newspapers teach you to work fast. I bet when you write your article today and you compare it with your time to write that same length article a year ago, that you're faster. You just get fast. And of course, in fiction, speed is the enemy, right? It should be deliberative. But for me, what it means is I sit down at my keyboard and I just go and I get the thing told. And when I get to the end, then I know my story. And I go back to the beginning. I change my characters' names. I change plot elements. I take big sections out. I put big sections in. I'm like, now I know what this guy is like. Now I know why this happened. And I wish, I know some people, they have it all mapped out. They have great plans. They have rough ideas. And to me, it's like I just write into the dark until I got to the end. Okay. Now, what is this thing about? Right?
Yeah. I feel like that was my first novel. My first novel, it was, it's a biographical historical fiction. And I felt like it was a marathon. It took me 8 months to get that first draft down.
Yeah.
And I felt I was running a marathon and I was pushing through and I had to do this. And, it was already, I was lucky because it was her life. So I already had the outline. And then it's taken like 3 years to get to a point where I'm like, okay, now I can go ahead and start pitching agents. I'm finally at this point where I'm like, okay, now I can pitch agents. Now I can see who wants it. And yeah, the actual artistry in a novel is the rewrite. Is that slow going back in, changing the characters, taking out huge chunks, killing your darlings. That's where all the artistry is.
For me, it's also where the weave occurs. In The Curiosity, there's a character who, when he comes in the 1900s, when he comes home from work each day, early 1900s, he always has a gift for his 4-year-old daughter every day. And some days it might be a pencil eraser, but he always has a gift for her. And one day he forgets, and she comes running up, "What's my gift? What's my gift?" And he knows it's going to make his wife angry, but he says this, and he tears a button off of his vest and gives her the button. And then she loves it. And he kind of tries to get the string away so his wife won't notice. And I knew I had that cute little anecdote. And then, and that book is a love story, among other things. And then when I got to the end, I realized that there was actually some potency in that, that actually was a more articulate act of love than I had realized when I was just banging it out. So then I had him give a button to the woman he was in love with. And then I had the book open with her after he's gone, and she's sitting on a pier looking out at the Atlantic Ocean, and she's turning a button over and over in her hands and remembering him. And that's how the book begins, is with her, and ends, is with her on that pier holding that button, because at the end, that's all she has of him. And the book ended up, it was called The Curiosity. Let me see if I have a copy. So you can see that the letter O on the cover
is a
button. And if you go inside to the start of every chapter, there's a little button. It ended up being a motif for the whole thing. And it was just this one little story about him where he was just placating his 4-year-old
Mhm.
and it became a symbol of love all through the book. And when I went on tour, people gave me buttons.
Oh my gosh.
You know, I still have them. For a long time, they were here on my desk, and now I have them up in my closet. And, you know, like, I'm still grateful. I'm still grateful for those buttons, you know? I don't mean to be saccharine about it, but really, like, and that was what revision did. That was saying, okay, now I finished this thing. What do I have here? That little moment with a 4-year-old is maybe that was better than I thought. Maybe I can do something with that. And it became like this connection with the reader that's lovely. And how lucky am I? I like my job.
And then I love that. That's such a lovely story with that. And
Thank you.
I'm so
Thank you.
excited about the next book.
Well, I don't think that people are going to give me atomic bombs at my reading. I
hope not. I would hope not. I mean, yeah.
Okay, can I give you the redemption part of the story?
Absolutely.
That book is based on a real guy. And at the end of the war, he was given a full ride to get a PhD in physics from Stanford. He was a hero for building the detonator. And he went there thinking he might study acoustics, maybe optics. Radar was a new field, pretty much. And he got there, and all anyone was talking about was bomb, hydrogen bomb, thermo bombs, you know, lighter bombs, all of that stuff. And he lasted 6 weeks, and he couldn't take it because his conscience was after him. And so, just kind of to pay the bills, he took a part-time job at a company that repaired church organs. And so this would be 1946. And when he died in 1983, he was pretty much globally acknowledged to be one of the greatest cathedral organ builders in human history.
Wow.
The research has been a blast because I've learned all this stuff about atomic bombs, and I've gone to Los Alamos, but I've also been in the guts of some amazing organs. And I've been in his organ factory. His company still exists, and it's been really fun. It's a great redemption story.
Yeah. How neat. I love that. And so, yeah, we're going to have you back when that comes out. So, because we're going to
Please.
Have to do that. Yes.
Right now, it's just this big stack of paper. And we'll see what, you know, give me a year and a half, and we'll see what comes of it, okay?
That sounds like a book of the month book.
There you go.
It does, yes.
With plenty of fantasy casting opportunities.
Oh, yes, a fun thing to do.
That's one of our favorites at Wine, Women, and Words. We take our fantasy casting picks very seriously because in case one day, you know, they have to make a movie out of a book we've read, we've got the cast ready for them.
It's like, well, you know, it's football, but better.
So it's interesting because one of with the Curiosity, you know, is in development to be a television show.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and
wow.
And they have, I mean, who knows? Who knows, right? It's a crazy business. There are 2 executive producers. There's a production company. There's a director. There's a screenwriter. There's a pilot episode script. And there are a couple of ridiculously famous people who are interested. But, of course, that's why it won't happen. But the guy who would play the judge who tore the button off would be perfect. And the woman who would play his lover,
not so much.
Not so good. But you know what? No one has asked my opinion. I'm just the weirdo that wrote the story. You know?
Because I would think so as a writer.
How would you cast the Baker's Secret? Who would you pick?
Oh gosh. You're putting me on the spot. I have to think about this. You know, Emma, I kind of saw Emma as like Emma Stone from the Easy A and of course La La Land. I think she would make a good Emma, in my opinion.
See, for some reason, when I just like right now thinking of fantasy casting, Emma, I saw Anna Kendrick.
Ooh, you can she's like a lot of stuff just because your husband has a crush on her.
Oh, I know, but just because she's like always, she's like the invisible third party in our household. So
I see.
She comes to mind, but
The
she's
one
like,
she calls you Anna, right?
well, fortunately that hasn't happened yet. But if it does, I mean, if she bumped Shakira, and I feel like I can compete a little more with Anna Kendrick than I could with Shakira, so I'm okay with that.
I need to look her up right now.
But I feel like Anna Kendrick is like, she's scrappy.
Oh,
and
she's
Emma
beautiful. She's really beautiful. Yep.
Yeah, and in Emma, like, you have to be scrappy and you have to be like resourceful to, first of all, live in those times and to decide, I'm not gonna, I'm gonna do something about this and I'm gonna set up a network. You have to. There's a certain degree of scrap that you have to have.
Emma Stone is scrappy.
She is scrappy, but we could have this debate.
We're about to have this debate.
From a casting standpoint, it's the director's challenge, right? Is how do you have a woman who is deliberately concealing her beauty, but the audience can still see her beauty? That she will be, her hair will not be perfect. There will be dirt on her face, but she will nonetheless be beautiful. And that takes a certain gift, Many of the actresses that I think do that well are kind of too old for it. Emma's 22.
Stone
That
can still play. She's 20, so she could still do it. And I think Anna Kendrick can still do it. I think they can pull it off. I mean, if Charlize Theron can wrench herself up to play a serial killer,
True.
I think if she can play anything, it's good with me. Let's get her a role. I need to write a book for her.
Well,
and then
sorry.
well, I was just gonna have another pick. For Ezra, when I was reading it, I can't picture the actor's. I don't know the actor's name, but I can picture his face. He was in Taxi, and then in Numbers, he played the father. And he's there's that show on CBS. I haven't watched it, but it's called The Donut Shop.
Oh, I'll Google.
Yeah, Google him, because I picture him as Ezra. That's who I pictured in it. Was that guy? Somebody like, he's got that portliness about him. He's Jewish in real life.
The Superior Donuts show, is that who we're talking about?
I kind of like Paul Giamatti for that.
I love Paul Giamatti. Anything Paul Giamatti does is fine with me.
I agree.
You just say that, and I'm like, okay, that works. I mean, I don't care. Is it a woman? Sure, put Paul Giamatti in. That works for me too.
That's like me and oh gosh, he was in The Devil Wears Prada. Bald guy.
Oh, he's great. He was in that beautiful version of Midsummer Night's Dream too.
Yes.
Oh, that's
why can't I think of his
name? Stanley. Isn't it Stanley?
Stanley Tucci. Very good.
Yes. Yeah. I was actually for NaNoWriMo, the National November Writers Month. I actually wrote a story set during World War II about the Italian internment up in Monterey, California. And I based the character of the father in that story on Stanley Tucci.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah,
there are people, I've heard of people who have actually written stories for a particular actor or actor. And I think that would be a great skill that I do not have.
I find for me sometimes looking at actors, it helps when I'm trying to get characteristics down for a character. Since I'm out pitching my first novel, I'm like, okay, now in between, that for agents, I'm going to start working on the second one. And I actually was listening to an interview the other day with Vincent D'Onofrio. He was in Criminal Minds, and most recently, he was also in who was the bad guy in the Daredevil?
Oh.
He's been big guy. He's been in a lot of stuff, and there's this one character who's just got this booming presence in the book, and can be kind of a bad guy. And so I was like, this is how I'm going to have to picture him. And I'm like, okay, now I'm going to go watch a bunch of Stanley or Vincent D'Onofrio movies and TV series so I can get down some of the mannerisms, because by seeing those mannerisms helps me translate those mannerisms into the character itself. Like, and when I was doing NaNoWriMo, it was just movies up the wazoo. Just because it was like, okay, I gotta get these. Yeah, no, it's not at all. And I have a very weird Google search. I've got all these random, random topics like diseases of the 19th century, yellow fever plague of New Orleans.
Well, I can imagine writing a book about the atomic bomb yields some very interesting Google searches.
The most interesting, yes, my Google search history, I should be imprisoned for it.
Every good writer out there, right?
There's actually, I have a story about that, if I may, which is that when I went down, I did go down to Los Alamos to see, the place where they really assembled and built the 3 atomic bombs that were detonated in 1945. Right, there was the test one, which was plutonium, and then there was Hiroshima, which was uranium, and then Nagasaki, which was plutonium again. And so while I was there, I brought with me a couple of books, about maybe a half dozen books, and some of them were like were this guy. Okay, the Making the Atomic Bomb. It's like it's this thick. It's a Bible about it. But I also had a whole bunch of books like this. These little oral histories, like I was the wife of a physicist, and this is what it was like, with little hand drawings on. So I had, but this one's called Tales of. So basically, I have all these books that are like bomb, 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 right? I brought them with me because they have maps in them and stuff. And then Bill McKibben had a new book, a novel out that I've been given, that I was told was very funny, his first novel. So so everywhere I went in Los Alamos, people were asking me for my ID. Like, why are you asking these questions? Why are you here? Why are you walking through this neighborhood? Well, there used to be a plutonium building here. And they're like, this is a neighborhood, buddy. So the whole time everyone's asking for my ID. So I get to Albuquerque to fly home to Vermont. And what do you know? I get flagged by a TSA. And they send me aside, and my bag is opened, and they're the guards. And my computer and my shoes have come down the chute, and they have me sort of standing aside. And I said, do you want me to get my computer and shoes? And they said, no, you stay right there. And I said, well, they're in the way of the other people. And they said, stay right there. And they had a guard come stand next to me. Okay. And, I just want to get home that night, and you hear various stories of degrees of reasonableness about TSA. So I'm just sitting there and being a good boy while this guy takes out bombing, making a bomb, how to blow things up, these books, right? And there's a stack of them, and I'm not saying a word. I'm just not saying a word, not joking, not anything. And then he picks up Bill McKibben's book, and he looks at it, and he opens it, and I can see him like doing this, and he turns the page. Now, I have not read that book. I was saving it for the flight home. Okay. So for all I know, the opening scene is a bombing, it's about environmental revolutionaries. I don't know. And when he turns to page 3, I call across the TSA area. How is it? And he looks up. Oh, this is pretty good. This is pretty good. And he goes back to reading it. He says to the guys, this guy's fine. So they let me come over and put my shoes on and get my computer, and I get all my stuff back in the bag, and it's all a mess now, and get the books jammed in on top. And then I say to the guy, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that was my book for the flight home. So I can't give it to you. And he's like, oh, okay, that's pretty interesting. So I immediately sent an email to Bill, like, thank you for not having a bombing as the opening scene in your book. And you got me out of hot water with TSA.
Love it.
Story.
So the lesson to take away from that is check any books involving atomic bombs when you're flying.
Pretty much check a bag of books. Yeah. No one gets upset when I bring like books about organs.
No, but they might like scoot a little bit away from you if they see you reading that.
It's true. A little cautious.
Well, that gives you the whole aisle on the plane. So there you go. The whole row will be yours.
Little leg room.
Right? Well, I know we did say we generally do about half an hour, but I think we've like taken up a whole hour almost. But we had so much fun chatting with you. We are going to talk a little bit about our book of the month now. And you're welcome to stay and hang out with us if you want.
Thank you.
But thank you so much for joining us, and you will definitely have to come back when your next book is out because.
All right, I will do that, and thanks so much for letting me join you. I got to say, you know, there's some kind of a show that my sons watch where a guy interviews celebrities and they're eating chicken wings that are increasingly hot. Have you seen this?
No, I haven't.
Oh, it's fantastic because some people. You know, the guy who played the villain in he was the quarterback in Friday Night Lights, and then he played the villain in the most recent Marvel thing.
Not Jordan Peele, because that's a comedian. But I know exactly who you're talking about because he's beautiful.
Okay, so that guy turns out to be a monster. He's eating like the hottest wings, and he's like, "Oh, respect." And then the interview goes on. But this guy, what happens is, you know, when he's interviewing, I'm trying to remember what woman it was, and there was a point where she's just like, I need to drink some milk, and then he's like, all right, now we're gonna ask questions about your first husband. Like, it was really amazing, and I think that's a harsher approach. I think that drinking wine during an interview makes me tell long stories, and that's why we took up so much time. So thank you for your unique interview technique. It really works.
It's all part of our master plan, really. So,
I mean, you give somebody a glass of wine, and then they just start talking.
Thanks for having me along. Great to visit with you.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much, and we will definitely have you on for your next book because
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right, take care.
Take care. So we have started reading Little Girl Lost.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell this is going to be one of the plot twist books that are like, oh my God, because I already like had to like go back and reread a little bit to make sure that I wasn't like being led astray as some writers tend to do with their readers because we're sneaky and evil like that.
I'm not. I'm an angel. I am the epitome of good girl and bullshit that goes along with being a good person.
Yes, no evil plot twists from Diana, ever.
Not at all. You guys totally believe that. And if you do, I have this wonderful, wonderful piece of oceanfront property in Kansas that you'll just die for.
So, but what I'm really interested about in this book is it's probably one of, I mean, would it count as historical fiction because it technically did happen like 40 years ago, 30 years ago?
It's borderline because, you know, this is the one thing that bothers me about the historical fiction genre. It's not considered historical fiction if it happens like after 1960. Historical fiction kind of has a cutoff time of like
really
1960. Really? Yeah, and I feel like historical fiction shouldn't really have if it happens in the past in the history a significant event in the past plays a role in the story or if that time period plays a significant role within the story, it should be considered historical fiction. Like, in my opinion, Little Fires Everywhere. It takes place in the 90s. You can't tell that story during the present day.
Mm.
But because you can't tell that story in present day, it should be historical fiction. Even though it happened, I hate to say this, 20 years ago? Over 20 years ago? Because that really is going to date me because I'm almost 40 now. So because it happened during that time period, it should be historical fiction because you can't tell that story without that time period. And I feel like in a lot of ways, you know, The Little Girl Lost, I'm only on chapter 3 and I'm still, I feel like the little girl lost in this because I feel kind of lost in the story.
Oh, part again.
So, Michelle, you're going to have to give me some tutoring lessons as to what's going on.
Well, I'm kind of, I think we're actually almost at the exact same place, if not maybe a page or two different. But so I've met Amelia, who is the baby that Calvin finds at the very beginning.
Okay.
So Amelia is now in college, and her mom, her parents aren't actually her birth parents because she was abandoned in the church. But
yeah, I'm at that point too. Okay.
So, but it's, it's interesting. I mean, like you said, there so many elements of this story would be changed with modern technology, because now she's gonna, obviously we know she's gonna try to find her birth parents or her birth mother. And this Oren guy, I thought he was like a totally nice guy when I first started reading the chapter with him. And then all of a sudden he's a murderer and a rapist and apparently a priest. So that...
I'm not making any priest jokes.
You're right. That's kind of like the trifecta of bad guys. So, but I'm really interested. I love thrillers that have so many different threads that when you first start reading them, you're like, I have no clue what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't even know if I'm reading the same story right now. But then at the end, it's like a present, all wrapped up so nicely.
Yeah, because, I think what threw me off was the first chapter in the 1960, was it 68? Yeah, 1968. That kind of threw me off. And so I'm like, wow, does this play into this? And yeah, that I think that's what threw me off in there. Because okay, so now I think I'm tracking a lot better.
Yeah, I think, and now the title, it makes sense to me, because clearly Amelia was what I'm assuming. I mean, I could be wrong. If there is going to be a novel that completely throws the readers for a loop, I feel like it's going to be this book.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see. And I should stop. I'm flipping through it as we talk, just playing with the pages, and I need to stop because your eyes are gonna fall on like the one sentence that will ruin the whole book.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and then she died. What?
Yeah.
Kidding. It didn't say that. Don't worry.
It did fall into the mouth of a tiger and got eaten. So there you go.
Right.
It was actually kind of really messed up. But when my siblings were little and my parents would take us to Disneyland, and my sister would ask, "What happens at the end of the ride?" And my dad would tell her, "Oh, we just fall off a cliff and we fall into the mouth of a tiger and it ends."
Oh my God, that's awful.
What? And he'd be like, "Oh, don't worry, sweetie. It's just a pretty, pretty princess ride." And she would believe it. My sister was not gullible as a child at all.
That's something I would believe, though. So,
huh?
That sounds like something I would believe, though. So, I can't judge.
Yeah, the Pretty Pretty Princess ride was how we got her on to Pirates of the Caribbean for the first time, and my dad had to sit there and help her through the ride towards the end because she did the whole thing. He sat in the back of the boat, and my stepmom and my little brother and I were in the front of the boat, and my brother was just like, "This is the greatest thing ever," and my poor little sister's in the back crying, and just hear, "This isn't the Pretty Pretty Princess ride."
I call bullshit.
Wasn't there.
This is why. Trust issues.
Right? This is why my sister is in therapy, because we made her watch us kill bunnies during the Oregon Trail, which I've talked about in previous episodes. We tell her it's a Pretty Pretty Princess ride when it's really about a bunch of pirates. And I make her go on Big Thunder Mountain, and I tell her, "Oh, don't worry, it's just a little train ride. It doesn't go very fast." This is why my sister went to therapy.
You guys, We're awful.
We are. And like I said, I'm the good girl in this situation, in this podcast. Right? Totally.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
talk to my kids who couldn't have Oreos at 9 o'clock at night because of me. I am evil. So
this is why we're friends. They can have Oreos at 9 o'clock at night, but after they go to sleep, you know you're going to have Oreos.
Oh, I'm going to eat the Oreos that I hid from them and told them that they were all gone.
Then when I wake up tomorrow morning, they'll be all gone. They could see the wrapper in the trash.
I am that mom sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes.
You are brilliant. You are a brilliant mom. When I become a mom, I'm going to be like you. I'm going to pull shit like that too.
I hear chaos. I feel like it's going to come bursting through the door at any second.
Hide. Quickly. Keep hiding. Lock the door. Lock the door.
Turn off the lights. There's no one here. I forgot that another light was on. That would have been more dramatic if it had gone black.
It totally would have. So we're on chapter 3. And that's really pretty much all we go into. With
I
it.
feel like chapter 3 is really where it starts. Like the first couple of chapters was setting up the story while not setting up really anything concrete. So there's, multiple storylines in the air and you don't know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
But chapter 3, I think, is when it's really going to start moving forward into like the present day, even though the present day is 1987.
Yeah, my plan is to finish it this weekend. I spent all my money last weekend on my wedding anniversary. So all of my plans this weekend are going to be involving reading in my pool. So I plan on reading this weekend. I can totally finish it this weekend, I'm sure. And part of my problem was last weekend I bought an Eve Babbitt's book. And Eve is like one of my favorite authors right now. And so I spent a lot of time this week reading her stuff.
That's awesome. We are leaving, the day after tomorrow, we're leaving for the Outer Banks, and then we'll be at the beach for a week. So I fully intend on booking some beach time, my book. I don't know how that'll work out. I might still be reading at 11 o'clock at night after the kids go to bed, but that is the goal.
This is why you're at Grandma's house, because then you could be like, Grandma, Nonna, go spend time with Nonna. You don't get to see Nonna all the time. Here,
where's Nonni? Go get Nonni.
Yes, I'm going to read. You go be spoiled by Grandma.
She has chocolate.
Yes.
Ask her about the chocolate.
Because that's what grandmas do best.
Well, I know now we are definitely at our hour.
We are. We just had such a lovely time talking with Stephen. He was such a fun person to talk with. I hope you guys like him.
He's definitely going to have to come back, whether or not he realizes that. But
I totally made it serious with it. And so, yeah, guys, don't worry. I'll make it happen when the next book comes out. We'll have him back on.
Yes, and I'm going to go order like all of his books because they all sound amazing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, they really good. The Baker's Secret really is. It is a lovely book. It really is a lovely book. Like I mentioned, if you guys follow Creating Her Story, I interviewed him in April via email. I went through his publicist. That's to his credit. That is why he did not remember that, because it was through the publicist. It wasn't with him directly. Because now he's not going to forget me. But it really is a lovely book. You guys should pick that up. And while you're doing that, go ahead and do Little Girl Lost.
Yes.
You can pick that up too. In fact, The Baker's Secret is actually available on Audacity. Or not Audacity. That's the wrong thing. That's where I added our episodes.
Audible.
It's available on Audible. So you guys, go to winewomenandwordspodcast.com. In our bookshop, you can click on the link for the Audible subscription. You can get 2 free books. I don't know if Little Girl Lost is available on audiobook yet, but it's worth looking up. But I know for a fact The Baker's Secret is available on audiobook. So you can go pick it up on Audible on our website. It could be one of your 2 free books.
There you go. You see how we're always thinking about you guys?
We are.
All right. Well, I'm going to go because my kids are crying.
Yeah, you did. I actually have to do some like writing work tonight. I have to work on my presentation for Mary Shelley.
Oh, hey. This 3-hour time difference is really throwing me off.
Yes. Okay, here we are. I'm sorry, my internet froze there for a second. Yeah, I'm working on my Mary Shelley presentation. If you guys are in the LA area, next weekend, I'm going to be giving a presentation on Frankenstein and Feminism, the life of Mary Shelley. And that will be at the Macara Center for the Arts in Santa Ana. Go to our website. You can get details on it there.
Yay. And go to the presentation and let me know how it is because I can't go.
Well, I'm thinking we're going to do a Facebook Live of it. For those of you who aren't in the LA area, check it out on Facebook Live.
Yay. All right. Well, everyone, have a good night and keep reading and come back next week.
Yes. Good night, guys.